Before the days of Super Smash Bros. And even before the first Mortal Kombat, one fighting game helped solidify and define the genre, and that game was Street Fighter 2. The first Street Fighter hit the arcades in 1987. This was before the fighting game genre really had any hype surrounding it. Especially in arcades, beat-em-ups were all the rage. Unfortunately, Street Fighter failed to really change that. While the game was an absolutely necessary stepping stone for the franchise, Capcom didn't really have the formula established yet. The signature 6-button control scheme was introduced, but Street Fighter 1 lacked the tight combos and the balance that the franchise became well known for executing so well. This led to the game lacking a real competitive scene. Luckily, in 1991, Capcom was able to turn things around with arguably the most influential fighting game of all time, Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 released in 1991, and this game single-handedly defined the competitive fighting game genre. Sometimes, sequels take what a predecessor did well and improve upon it. Other times, sequels will milk a franchise for its name while providing little to no innovation or improvements. Street Fighter 2 did neither of those things. This game improved every single aspect of the first game to the point of being almost unrecognizable. The graphics are better and the plot is a little bit more interesting, but neither of those things really matter. What matters is the absolute overhaul to the tightness of the controls. The game became an instant success after releasing, and Street Fighter 2 cabinets began popping up in every single arcade. In Street Fighter 2, the controls are pretty much the same as the first Street Fighter. You can use the joystick in 8 different directions, and you have 6 different attack buttons. What completely changed was the responsiveness of these controls. If you have a combination of moves in your head and you have the skills to actually press the right buttons at the right time to make it happen, it will work. I don't know what the developers did to make this game so tight, but whatever it was worked perfectly. This game is so responsive that you can play it today and it still feels more accurate than a lot of current fighting games. Street Fighter 2 also implemented new combos that couldn't be blocked when executed properly. As funny as it is, the developers didn't even intend for that to be the case, but it became a staple in the franchise and led to the game being highly competitive. Competitive gaming is everywhere you look these days. Everyone's grandma even knows what Fortnite is, but this was not the case in the early 1990s. The technology for online gaming didn't exist, and most people didn't have consoles in their homes. That's why Street Fighter 2 was originally an arcade exclusive. Back in those days, long before my time, if you wanted to game with friends, you would have to round up a bunch of quarters and head over to the arcade. Street Fighter 2 was one of the first games that became truly competitive, and a big reason for this is the skill gap between a player who works at getting better and someone who is new. Take this sentence with a grain of salt, but Street Fighter 2 resembles a sport in some ways. If I try to step in a boxing ring with Floyd Mayweather, it does not matter how much natural talent I might have, the 30 plus years of hard work and discipline that man has put in will ensure he is always further along than I am. Street Fighter was one of the first video games to feel like that. If you want to get good at the game, you have to put in the work and treat it like a sport. I bet competitive players even run drills to almost ensure a flow state when they're playing. Practicing with other good players resembles sparring, enhancing your reflexes and preparing you for the unexpected. It's one of the main reasons I don't play any Street Fighter games competitively. I have a heavily modded Street Fighter 2 arcade 1-up cabinet, but if you bring a competitive player who has put the time and work into my house, it would not even be close. I would get my ass beat every single time. Games like this make me really understand the term esports. Maybe it's a bit of the nostalgia talking here, but I wish we still had more arcades to play games like this, because competitive games are so much more fun in person. The success of Street Fighter 2 in arcades led to it being ported to tons of consoles. The Super Nintendo port is the most well-known and successful one, but this game has been ported to everything, which says a lot about its legacy. You can play it on almost every Sony, Nintendo, or Microsoft console, and even on PC and mobile. But the real ones know that nothing quite beats playing it on an arcade cabinet if you want that classic feel. There are a lot of different versions of this game. There's Champion Edition, which is kind of like the definitive edition that features better balancing among the characters and 4 new Grandmasters in the story mode. There's also Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is just a faster paced version of the game, and it's my personal favorite way to play. There are plenty more releases, and realistically, I could make a whole video dedicated to talking about each individual one, but we're not going to do that. What's important to know is no matter which version you play, you're going to get a fairly well-balanced competitive fighting game experience. It's also important to note that the success of Street Fighter 2 led to the also successful Street Fighter 3 and many other games like my absolute favorite arcade fighting game, Marvel vs. Capcom. Street Fighter is still going strong. Though the more recent titles may not be as groundbreaking or influential as Street Fighter 2 was, the games are still excellent. Street Fighter 6 is coming out in a few days and seems to be getting generally solid reviews. This may be my reintroduction to the franchise, as the RPG-inspired story mode does look pretty appealing to me, and if I get the game early enough in its lifespan, maybe I'll actually have the chance to get good enough to play it somewhat competitively online. I've always personally been better at fighters like Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur, which both have designated block buttons, but neither of those games would really exist without Street Fighter, and it's important to respect the OG. As always, thank you to any of you that have stuck around until the end of the video. I try to push out new content weekly, and if you enjoyed this video, liking it and subscribing to the channel would be greatly appreciated. Comment below letting me know if you're getting Street Fighter 6 and what you think of the game so far, and I'll see you in the next one.